This is Dads Watching Sports. It's the show by dads who watch sports, for dads who watch sports, or just dads in general. Here are the dads with a plan for every hashtag dad life and sports fan, Kyle Castles and Michael Draper.
Thank you, mysterious, deep-voiced man that does our intro. We appreciate that.
Have you met that guy? He's a great dude.
He is a great guy. Yeah, he's a good guy, but never met him in person. He's kind of mysterious, but yeah, I'm Michael Draper. He is Kyle Castles. It's Sunday night, and that can only mean one thing. It is time for some dads watching sports. Thank you, one, and thank you all for checking us out, whether you're streaming us live or if you're downloading our podcast. If you did that, thank you for doing that, and please continue to do so and tell all your friends about the greatest podcast on the history of the planet, Dads Watching Sports.
On the history?
Yeah, I was going to say on the world, on the planet, and then I was thinking on the history, and on the history of the planet.
Look, you're supposed to be the host. You can't do stuff like that.
Well, it's been a long day, man. It's been a long couple of days, and my words just get mixed up a little bit.
I mean, I'll let it slide this time.
Well, one of us took a nap before the show. The other one didn't. And
one of us showed up about 3 minutes ago.
Hey, that's all right, man. You showed up. You're here. You got your game face on, and I'm very excited to sit down and chat with you about all kinds of fun stuff, Kyle. It is episode 78 of Dads Watching Sports, and we thank you so much for checking us out, Kyle. We've had a busy couple of weeks, man. We've kind of run the gamut on some of the Power 5 conferences, kind of previewing the college football season, which, thank the good Lord, starts this weekend. We have no more Saturdays, Kyle, without college football until January, and I'm very excited about that.
Probably the biggest game of the year, right? In UCLA and Hawaii.
Yeah.
Next week. Wow.
It's gonna be exciting. It's gonna be very exciting. There are a lot of really good games to get the season kicked off with. We'll talk about that here in just a little bit. But yeah, we a couple of weeks back we had our SEC preview. We had Brent Doherty of 104.5 The Zone in Nashville. He's a Vol and a Nashville native. He also obviously follows the Commodores. Talked a lot about the SEC. Had Roddy Nabolsi on with us that week of dogsports.com to talk UGA and just kind of all things SEC. Then we followed it up with Jay Stevens of the Jay Stevens podcast and Locked On Buckeyes podcast. And Jay talked Big Ten and everything about the Big Ten and all about the Buckeyes. And that was good to get with him and hear some of that great stuff about what's going on in the Big Ten. Then last week, Kyle, we had a double whammy again. We had two guests joining us. We had Anwar Richardson from orangebleeds.com talking Texas and Big 12. And then Andy Bitter, who's a Virginia Tech beat writer, covers the ACC and Virginia Tech. And so we've kind of run the gamut in terms of most of the Power 5 conferences as we're previewing college football. But we have one that we have yet to do, and we were unable to get a guest on this week covering the Pac-12. So, Kyle, we're going to do our very best to give a little Pac-12 preview. Yeah, that's the face that I would make as well. It's the conference champions. It's there's a lot of good stuff happening out there after dark.
There's an obvious reason. And we'll talk about how there has not been a Pac-12 team in the playoff yet, right? There's a reason for that. The rest of the Power 5 conferences take football seriously.
It's true.
We ask about SEC media days, we get SEC people. We ask about Big 12, we get Big 12. We ask about Big 10, we get Big 10. We ask about ACC, we get ACC. The Pac-12 people don't care enough to even come on a show and talk about it.
I know.
So why should we put them in the playoff?
We shouldn't. We probably shouldn't. Exactly. But we are going to talk a little bit about Pac-12 as we kind of get things started here. Kyle, the media made their predictions for the Pac-12, and it's pretty similar to what you would probably expect and that we've seen over the past couple of years. The North Division, Oregon getting all but 2 of the votes to win that North Division over Washington. Then you had California, Stanford, Oregon State, and then the Cougs, all my Coug faithful back up in Everett, Washington. You guys are picking dead last. Not all that surprising there. Then the South Division had USC, Utah, Arizona State, the Fighting Chip Kellys, Colorado, and then Arizona, who is also really, really, really struggling as a program. Kyle, so you look at that, or you hear those the way that it's predicted for the Pac-12. Anything stand out to you? Any thoughts there, or do you think this is pretty much going to go to chalk, and we're going to see Oregon and USC battling out for the Pac-12 title?
I mean, I think that's about right. Oregon, USC. If you're really talking about what surprises me, Chip Kelly came in and was kind of the orchestrator, and we'll talk about him in a minute, so I don't want to get too deep into this. But he's the one that kind of brings Oregon to prominence on the national stage. He was the coach of Oregon when they started all of the pairing with Nike and having the cool uniforms and all of that, and it just hasn't clicked in Brentwood in LA, right, at UCLA, and so to me that is somewhat shocking, because I really thought, like, okay, he can just kind of replicate what he did in Eugene. Like, if you can recruit to Eugene, Oregon, you can recruit to LA.
That's exactly what I was about to say. And not being able to do that in Los Angeles, and not that they've recruited pretty well, but being able to turn that into victories is something they have not been able to do. And that program, I mean, is just taking a beating over the past decade with multiple coaches, and they just can't seem to get it right. And doesn't help that the USC for a good stretch there was just on an absolute tear. I agree with you.
And let's be honest, this is the Pac-12. They will cannibalize themselves. Utah will beat somebody. Maybe it's SC. I think they play Oregon as well. I wouldn't be surprised if Washington pulled out an upset somewhere. I mean, let's be honest. Washington State could just show up. I mean, it's the Pac-12. Anybody can beat anybody, and that sounds like what people say about the SEC. The difference is, like, when you talk about the SEC, there's always Alabama, coached by Nick Saban, and there's a Florida team, and there's a Georgia coached by Kirby Smart. Like, these teams just kind of stay on top, and they really don't get beat by anybody they're supposed to beat. They get beat by each other, where Pac-12 is going to walk in and just SC is going to lay an egg on a Friday night game because for some reason the Pac-12 wants to play a Friday night game, and it is what it is.
Yeah. And one thing that's kind of telling about the Pac-12, and not to pile on to you guys, but you don't have anybody on to defend yourselves. You look at the AP poll, and I know we're going to talk about this here in just a few minutes. But you look at the AP poll, and the highest ranked Pac-12 team is Oregon, and in the AP top 25, they're 11th, and in the coaches poll, they're 12th. And I think that has a lot to say about the state of football in the Pac-12 when your best team is not even in the top 10. When you've got 3 SEC teams ahead of them, you got a couple of ACC teams, and then a few others sprinkled around. I think that says a lot. Kyle, you kind of hinted at it. It's been a while since the Pac-12 has made the playoff. Washington did make it 1 year, so they do have one representative that's made it. Washington made it, I think, back in 2016. So it's been 5 years.
You can tell that they made a very large impact on me for me to remember.
Yeah, without a doubt. But the Huskies did make it. So if you're thinking about the playoff and keeping that in mind, does a Pac-12 team, I'm not necessarily saying this year, but in the next couple of years make it? And who do you feel like is kind of primed to be the team that makes the run at the playoff from the Pac-12? If there is one.
There's going to be a Pac-12 team. Now, there's all sorts of changes happening in college football right now, college athletics.
Right.
With some sort of alliance between the Big Ten and the Pac-12 and the ACC. Am I hitting all of them? I think so.
Yep.
I don't know what that alliance is going to look like. So let's just pretend that these 3 conferences stay looking like they do right now. I'll be honest. I don't see Oregon or USC doing it this year. I don't see Arizona State doing it. I don't know what it is, but there's something about the Utah Utes team.
Mm-hmm.
They just always seem to kind of be hanging around. And I think maybe one year they're just going to find a way to put it together, and they'll be the next team. But who cares? They're going to get beat by whoever they play. They're going to be a 4 seed, and they're going to be knocked out game 1.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, well, and Utah's ranked in the coaches poll, or the AP poll at least, they're 24th. So I guess just to kind of recap, so Oregon's 11th in the AP, they're USC's 15, Washington's 20, and Utah's 24th. So they got some representation there. But I think a team will make it. I don't think it's going to be one this year, but I do think that they'll get one in the next 2 or 3 years. And Kyle, and really kind of looking at all those programs, I think to me the obvious answer I think is USC, and I think that because of what you talked about recruiting, the talent's there, they can get any kind of talent that they want there. To be honest, the question is can Todd Helton get them there? Can he be the one?
The thing is, yes, they could recruit like that, but they don't recruit like that anymore. It's not there. So, they should be able to. And by the way, Todd Helton is the former Tennessee quarterback that played baseball. It's Clay Helton that coaches USC.
Yeah, same thing. That's
same guy, right?
Same guy.
What I'm saying. No, but
Todd Helton he played at Tennessee and then actually went on to play for the Colorado Rockies.
The Rockies
in the Major League Baseball. Yeah,
I actually Googled that when I was answering it. It was like I'm pretty sure it's Clay Helton, but I don't want to sound stupid.
Hey, Todd, Clay.
Strong.
I'm sure they're brothers. They're related in some fashion, and they probably look alike. And so it could be either one.
So according to SI, the only school in the last 3 years in the Pac-12 that has a better than 70% win percentage is Oregon, right? Yeah. But Mario Cristobal's proven like he can't go and win at that level,
right?
And hasn't done it at Oregon. And if you're gonna, you talk about Oregon. Oregon's got everything outside of being in Eugene, Oregon, right? Like you have this partnership with Nike. They have the best of the best of the best. The last college football game to come out, the practice field in that game was based off of Oregon's own practice field. Like it is stupid what they have up there. So you should be able to recruit to Eugene. You should be able to recruit to LA, and neither LA team can do it. SC will go out and they'll grab a few, top of the list California kids, but not like they were doing. When we're talking about USC making runs, we're talking about going back to when we were in college.
Yeah,
that Reggie Bush, Matt Leinart team was 04.
Oh yeah, they were that stretch from like 03, 04, 05.
Yeah,
when they were pretty dominant for sure. But no, you're right. They haven't been able to recruit on that level, but I do think if I'm looking across the board, I think they're the team that gets it, that ends up getting into the playoff at some point in time. I don't think it's going to be this year. Kyle, we've mentioned a couple of coaches. You mentioned Chip Kelly. I mentioned Helton from USC, even though I didn't get his first name right. My apologies, Clay, right?
Clay.
Yeah. Okay. And then you've got obviously the Fighting Herm Edwards down there at Arizona State. Yeah. Some big names in the coaching ranks there, but they haven't really lived up to those expectations. You kind of talked about it with Chip Kelly specifically. So Kyle, if you're thinking about those three programs specifically, so Arizona State, USC, and UCLA, which of those coaches is going to be the first one that makes an exit and doesn't get it done at that school?
I can see two of these coaches being done by the end of this season.
Okay.
I don't think that's Herm Edwards. And I don't think that he has been great by any means. But he hasn't been there as long as Clay Helton or Chip Kelly.
Right.
I don't even think Chip Kelly has to go out and start winning Pac-12 titles. If that dude could win 7 to 8 games a year,
right,
I think he could stay in Brentwood as long as he wanted. Clay Helton's got the hard job, right? Like he's got the one with the expectations and a fan base with expectations, and he is not living up to those expectations. He's not winning Pac-12 titles. He's not winning Rose Bowls. He's not going to the playoffs. So I would say Clay Helton, but I also don't think the SC gets rid of him in the middle of the year. Where I think if UCLA starts out like 0-3, 0-4, Chip's out. So, I'll go Clay Helton because I don't think UCLA does that.
Okay. I'm going Chip Kelly. And I think that this is, like you said, I think that it just hasn't been what either one of them probably, UCLA or him probably thought this was going to be. And I could see almost if they have another, 5-6 win season, that they both kind of one of those just mutually to part way. Like, it's just like, hey, this isn't working. And Chip Kelly could go get any job probably in the country if he comes available. I just can't imagine that any top program would pass on him. Don't really know why, but I think that would probably be the case. And so I think this is the year. I think they have another struggling season. And I think whether he decides to leave, whether they decide to mutually part ways or they fire him, I don't think he'll be on the sidelines for UCLA next season. So I think Chip Kelly's going.
Yeah, I don't think you're wrong. If he wins 7, though, I could see him back next year. I mean, to me, that's the line. Like, if it's 6 or less, he's out. If he wins 7, maybe they bring him back.
Yep, I'm sure the Vegas line is exactly that, 6.5 on over wins on whether Chip Kelly stays around. All right, let's get out of the Conference of Champions, although it doesn't appear that it is, at least on the college football field. Unless, Kyle, we've talked SEC, we've talked Big 10, Big 12, ACC the past couple of weeks. Just as we're kind of making our way into the first part of college football season, any just specific thoughts about those conferences or anything that maybe you heard over the past couple of weeks in our interviews with some of the other guys that follow those conferences that you wanted to either bring back up or any just kind of ahas or whatever about those 3 conferences or 4 conferences?
Yeah. So, growing up, I heard, I remember Tom Osborne's Nebraska.
Mm-hmm.
Miami was Miami of the 80s. I think the name Gino Torretta got said on this show.
It did.
At some point in the last couple of weeks, which I thought you would say something about that, and you didn't, considering you loved yourself some Gino Torretta.
I did. Yeah, it was Jay Stevens, the Heisman winners bracket.
That's what
I was like, man, Gino didn't get any love, man. You have to make it sling it.
But Alabama and Florida in the SEC, Michigan, Ohio State, Texas, Oklahoma. We had the Blue Bloods, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we started to see a change about the time me and you were probably in high school, and kind of Oregon started making its run. SC kind of came back because SC has already gone through this thing once, and then got a Pete Carroll to come in that changed some things around. And I feel like we're going back to, I won't call them dynasties because not everybody can be a dynasty, but just blue bloods sitting at the top. Alabama is Alabama. Georgia is Georgia. Ohio State is Ohio State. Texas, okay, so Oklahoma, right?
Yeah.
And these blue bloods, and I feel like there was just enough parity in college football, a decade and a half ago maybe, that people kind of got used to that. And I do feel like there's almost, I don't want to say a boredom, because I don't think college football fans are bored, but you know what I mean? Like, we all look up and go, okay, it's going to be Alabama, it's going to be Clemson, Georgia's going to make some noise, and if they can beat Nick Saban, then sure, they can pull this off. Ohio State's going to win the Big Ten. Oklahoma's going to win the Big 12. The Pac-12 doesn't matter. I mean, it's the exact same thing that we saw last year and the year before that and the year before that, right? Like, we see Alabama, Clemson, they're there every year, right?
Yep.
And to me, that's hurting this playoff, right? Like, when you have playoffs, you like to see the upsets, and right, you take the 7-9 NFL, the NFC South champion, 7-9, and they walk into a 14-2 NFC West champion and knock them off, right? Everybody's like, what is going on? This is insane, right? You're not seeing that. And at least when we had bowl games, maybe we didn't see number 1 Notre Dame and number 2 Alabama play each other, because Alabama played the Sugar Bowl and Notre Dame played in the Orange Bowl. and then the pollsters. But at least there was this idea of like, okay, who's better, and we're going to talk. There's none of that. Am I making sense?
Yeah, no, you absolutely are. And that's a great point. Because I mean, we're gonna this is like a perfect segue into we were going to talk about the AP Top 25, and you look at it, and it's Bama, Oklahoma, Clemson, Ohio State, Georgia, and it's been a combination of those teams for the past 5 or 6 years. I mean, you think about, Alabama and Clemson met 3 or 4 times in national championship games over the past 5 or 6 years. The one kind of different year that was really exciting was the year LSU snuck in and Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and those guys were just explosive, and that was exciting.
Yeah.
But yeah, you look at it, and I mean, you and I are two of the biggest college football. I mean, I eat, sleep, and breathe it. I love it. And yeah, it's just like, are we just destined to see Alabama and Clemson again? Can somebody sneak in? Can we get something like an Iowa State? And I think there's, you kind of look, I listed the top 5. And you kind of look at that 6 through 13 or 14 or 15, and you think, okay, if those teams can be legit, and if they can make some noise, so you think of Texas A&M, they're going to get a chance at Bama. You think of Iowa State, they're going to get a chance at Oklahoma. Notre Dame doesn't. Well, they do play some people, but they're kind of the oddball in this. But then North Carolina, can they knock off Clemson and finally knock Clemson out of it? Florida, Miami, can they make some noise? USC, we talked about. Mm-hmm. The problem is those teams in that second tier just have not been able to compete on a regular basis. Yeah. And we would see every once in a while we'd see Iowa upset Ohio State, but from an SEC, ACC standpoint, it just wasn't happening.
Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, Bo Myers says top 25 playoff bracket would be interesting because some teams get lackadaisical and tired the longer the season goes on.
So first off, do you know who Bo Myers is?
I don't know that I have had the acquaintance of one Bo Myers.
Bo Myers is a former player of mine that I coached.
Okay.
That is now playing at my alma mater at Samford.
Okay.
And at least last year was the starting center. Bo, if you want to just send me another quick message on here and let me know if you're still starting at center, if they've moved you around, I'll be happy to see that information. But started at center last year. So good to hear from Bo. Here's what I'll say. You take a number that big, 25, cut it down to 24 so that we have an even number of teams and you can play it out. Way too many weeks, and we're not going to do that.
Yeah, that's kind of like, when they talk about continuing to expand the playoff. And at first, the whole thing was we'd go past into the second semester and all this. And I mean, not that even really mattered, but I do have to say, one, I am very impressed that someone that you used to coach has found success in life. And so congratulations to Bo for overcoming what was probably not the greatest coaching of your life and continuing to push through. So, but yeah, and here he is. There we go. He says, currently not starting, still coming back off a season-ending knee injury. Haven't had a long time to heal up due to the COVID season. That's completely understandable. Hope you feel better, Bo. Hope you heal up and get back on the football field for the Samford Bulldogs and do better than Mr. Castles did out there.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, you're welcome. Of course.
Okay, so I did want to make this point. So even if we do, so you brought up the playoff expansion. Let's say we expanded to 6 teams, 8 teams, whatever the number, 12 teams, whatever we decide on. Right now, I don't know that it matters.
Right.
Okay, so Alabama's going to have to go play Liberty in round 1 because they got Malik Wills and he's going to keep Liberty up at 11, ranked 11th in the nation. Good for him. But this doesn't matter. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it does. It doesn't matter because when Liberty's playing Alabama and it's in Tuscaloosa, it doesn't matter. And that would be the same for anybody that's going up against those top 3 or 4. And then you're, maybe in those kind of, I guess if you're doing 12, I don't even know who would be that matchup that would be right at each other. But those two teams that are kind of on the same line.
It's like a Georgia-Iowa State game.
Right. Yeah. That's a little bit harder to choose. But at the end of the day, the winner of that's going to go play one of the top 4 teams and more than likely lose.
Right. And
and
we've already seen Georgia, Alabama play. Like,
Yep.
I think this year they're not playing the regular season, but last couple of years they played twice.
Yep.
So I get it. I totally get. We wanted to see everyone play on the field, and we want to have a champion, and we're tired of these split champions, so we go to the BCS, and now all of a sudden there's a team getting left out, so we go to a playoff, and so we get it, but is this what we wanted? Is it?
I don't know. And it's interesting because you would think that, the discussion that we just had about, well, if they open it up to 12, it's still going to be probably the top 4 teams as the Final Four. But you think about the NCAA basketball tournament, and I don't know what the differentiating factor is with this, but you have those teams that are world beaters. I mean, I think back to there's North Carolina had a couple of teams in the past couple of years that were everybody just thought, okay, this is the clear-cut best team. The 2015 Kentucky team that didn't lose a game until the final. Like, and upsets happen. I mean, they happen every single year. But why do you think that is? Why do you think we would see that in college basketball? But here, you and I are very much on the lines of like, even if we expanded to 24 teams in college football, we would not see that. Why do we think that is?
I think there's a few things there. Basketball is very streaky. I mean, you know this. You coach basketball. If somebody gets hot and they just start hitting their shots, right? Whether you got a hand in their face or not, they're knocking them down. Anybody can beat anybody.
Sure.
The other thing is, when it comes to basketball, and I'm not saying there's no physicality, but the physicality that you run into with football, right? Like, why is it that Alabama is Alabama and Clemson is Clemson, quite frankly, Ohio State is Ohio State? In the trenches, those big fellas, right? Bo Myers is one of them. I used to be one of them. When you win in there, you win the game.
Right.
Right. And it's a lot easier. I'm trying to think how to word this. When you're just better, when I am physically better than the person across from me, I can beat them pretty much every time. And that's the big difference. Like, they may give me a few plays, but I'll win 90% of the plays and we win the game.
Mm-hmm.
Where you don't have that, in basketball, because you can't physically touch them, or you're not supposed to, at least. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah, and I get what you're saying. I mean,
it's more skill based and not physical based.
Sure. Yeah, that's a completely legitimate argument. I also wonder if it's because the and I don't know if this is a positive or like, does this sway it one way or the other? But the amount of players there's only 5 basketball players on the court for both teams. If, like you mentioned, if one just goes nuts, that has so much more of an impact on a game than if a running back rushes for 250 yards, but his defense is giving up 300. And does that make sense? What I'm saying?
Yeah, I totally agree.
The margin for error, I guess, is a lot less on the basketball court because there's less people playing on the court at one time. That's an interesting discussion. I'm glad you brought that up, because that's it'll be interesting to see if it kind of continues to play out this year that way. I mean, it looks like it's probably going to. And then where does the national college football fan base? Where do we like? I will just be very interested if we get Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, and Oklahoma again. It ends up being Ohio, Alabama and Clemson. Mm-hmm. Does there start to begin this here we go again? And is that addressed? But
when you want to have the best teams on the field fighting it out, then you're going to have the best teams. And it turns out the best teams are the same 4 or 5, right? Oklahoma and Notre Dame can fight over the 4th spot every year, and we'll just see who it is. But to me, part of the reason we fell in love with college football, right, and college sports in general, is the arguments, right? And if you take an undefeated Alabama team and put them in the Sugar Bowl against a 1-loss Oklahoma team, and Alabama blows them out, and you put Ohio State in the Rose Bowl against the 2-loss SC team, and Ohio State's undefeated. They blow out that SC team. Now all of a sudden we have this argument of who's the better team.
Sure.
And yeah, will we want to see them on the field? Sure. But once you get it, then there's no arguing, and it's just like, well, okay, that's the best team. Okay.
Yep.
And you just kind of shrug your shoulders. You know what I mean?
Yep. No, absolutely. Well, let's move on really quickly before we get a break. There's a lot of really great games. There's a lot of really great early games, which I'm excited about. But any key games that you're looking forward to coming up this season, really kind of across the board, whether it's early on or late in the season, just what are those games that are kind of standing out to you that you think could be either just fun or it could really dictate the kind of the direction of the college football season?
Well, I don't think there's any secret as to those games. I mean, week 1, I know week 0, Hawaii and UCLA. I'm looking forward to that game because, dear God, it's the first one, right? And I've missed it. But week 1, you have Georgia Clemson.
Yep.
And I mean, you're talking about national title implications. Week 1 in Charlotte, North Carolina. Like, here we go. We're gonna kick this thing off with a bang. It's interesting. Penn State, Wisconsin is also week 1, and that is a conference game week 1.
Right. Yeah.
I find that very interesting. And then week 2, I mean, we jump right back into it with Ohio State, Oregon. Like, okay, Pac-12, here's your shot. We're going to take your best team, go beat another best team. If you don't, shut up.
Mm-hmm.
Shut up. I don't want to hear it. I don't care anymore. If you can't go beat Ohio State, and let's be honest, Ohio State has been the solid number 3 for half a decade now.
Yeah.
It's been Alabama, Clemson 1-2, then Ohio State, then Notre Dame, Oklahoma kind of fighting for number 4. Oregon, we don't need you to beat 1 and 2. Just go beat number 3. Prove that the Pac-12 has something, right? We also get Washington, Michigan that game or that week. So you get another Pac-12, Big Ten. I feel like there's a chance that we might see a Rose Bowl if the Rose Bowl is not part of the Big Four this year, but kind of see a Rose Bowl matchup being played. Because I think Michigan's ready to turn a corner and maybe lose one game to Ohio State, but I could be wrong, right?
Yeah.
Beyond that, the Ole Miss Alabama game. I mean, you and I hate Ole Miss. I don't think I'm overstating that. But my goodness, I love Lane Kiffin when he's trolling Nick Saban. So I'm looking forward to his tweets.
Yeah.
And hopefully I'm not stepping on too many of yours. You know what? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. Go. Well, I'll name a few, and then I've got a few that are a little bit later on in the season as well. One game that I'm really excited about, really from the get go, it would be technically the second weekend, but it's kind of week 1, Friday night. You know, we had Andy Bitter on here last week, and he talked about Blacksburg. We talked about Enter Sandman. Friday night, under the lights, ESPN, and number 10 North Carolina comes in. First game back at Lane Stadium with fans. You know the energy is going to be just off the charts. I'm going to go ahead and pick it now, Kyle. Virginia Tech will knock off North Carolina in that game. So I'm looking forward to that one. We talked Clemson, Georgia. We talked Oregon, Ohio State. I've got Bama at A&M. October 9th is definitely a game. If Jimbo's going to get it done, he's got to go through Tuscaloosa. He's got to go through Nick Saban. We know the stat about, 0-25 or whatever, former assistants against Saban. Somebody's going to knock him off, and it could be Jimbo this year. And then, I think one game that could have really big playoff implications later on in the year, and I think it could be fun if both these teams are really good. October 23rd, USC at Notre Dame. You remember, what was that, back in like 04, 05, the push game where Reggie Bush pushes Matt Leinart across the goal line. Notre Dame was really good that year. Notre Dame has been one of the top programs in the country of late. USC not so much, but that could be a huge playoff implication game if both teams are set up maybe undefeated going into it. So, and then I'll throw another Notre Dame game that I'm interested to see, just from kind of like a historical college football fan standpoint. And I want to see where Florida State is. Notre Dame and Florida State open the season with each other. And that could be an opportunity for Florida State to get themselves back on the map. But those are my games.
So just one more I'm going to throw out there because it is interesting. Gus Malzahn's at Central Florida now. Yep. Week 7, you're throwing out dates, which is awesome, and I'm not. But it's week 7. So you got Gus Malzahn playing Cincinnati, which is the class of the AAC.
Yep.
The American Athletic Conference, right? And I don't think it's going to have any national title implications unless some teams start to lose and Cincinnati kind of runs the table there. Like maybe they can sneak in as a group of 5. But I think that's just going to be really difficult for them. But Gus, I mean, you lost your job at Auburn. I would have just sat at home and took the check, but instead you went and took the job at UCF.
Yep.
I'm curious to see just kind of how that works and what that looks like. So it's intriguing to me just because I want to see what Gus Malzahn can do when he gets out of the SEC. There's that to me. That's their litmus test this year. Like, where are you in comparison to the very top of the conference?
Yep. I mean, that program has been good before. I mean, Scott Frost got them to the really kind of the precipice of the playoff. And then Josh Heupel did a good job kind of keeping them, maybe not quite that level, but they were still in the national conversation. So that'll be.
But I mean, kept them to a level enough that he parlayed that into an SEC job.
That he did.
But you're forgetting something. UCF was big time even before that.
Oh, they were for sure. Yeah.
Dante Culpepper.
Yes.
Played him down in Orlando. So,
he did.
So you know what? I just wanted to say the name Dante Culpepper on the show because I don't think we've done that yet.
We have not. That is, we're 78 episodes in, and it took 78 to get Dante Culpepper on here. I know you love the Minnesota Vikings, and so
I can't stand the Vikings after
I know exactly
the Minnesota Miracle. But hey, you know what, Dante? I know you're listening. If you want to ever come on the show, email Mike or message him on Twitter at JM Draper. He'll be happy to get you on the show.
That's right, Dante Culpepper. We sure will. Well, Kyle, we're going to get to a quick break. When we come back, we've got a couple more things we're going to talk on college football. We've got some dad topics as well, of course. And then we'll talk about kind of what's going on the rest of the fall with dads watching sports. But we'll be right back after the break. Y'all stay tuned. Big news in the Dads Watching Sports podcasting world. You've heard us mention it on the show already. We are now part of the Off the Ball Podcast Network. We're super excited to be joining the team of great shows, hopefully adding a little dad flavor to the mix. You can check out Off the Ball Podcast and Off the Ball Network on all your social media sites. Just search Off the Ball Network. And while you're there, give them a like and a follow. You won't regret it. When we're back here on Dad's Watching Sports, was kind of sound like you were wrestling with a gorilla through there. I don't know what you did, but you hit something. It was just like
it's probably picking up my magnet in my head.
Oh, well, they could be.
Yeah.
Be careful. Don't stand too close to a microwave. We're back here on Dad's Watching Sports. Michael Draper, Kyle Castles. It is Sunday, August the 22nd. We're having a good time here talking some college football. We'll get into some dad topics here in just a few minutes as we are, Kyle, both coaching our kids this fall in some youth sports. Very excited. Oh, you're not oh, well, but you've coached before.
I coached last year or in the spring, but I'm not coaching this fall.
We'll get into that here in just a minute. But Kyle, one thing that came out just this past week, and we knew that this was coming, and I'm not saying that this is a good or a bad thing, but we knew it was coming. We talked about Oregon and their football program. So both University of Oregon and Oregon State have decided that in order to attend a football game there and watch their Beavers or the Ducks, that you are going to have to either have proof of a COVID vaccine or within the last 3 days have a proof of a negative test. This is an interesting thing because, I don't know that I ever thought throughout this entire process is that we would start to have proof of that. I thought maybe airplanes and maybe a couple of different situations, but at sporting events is not something that was really on my radar, especially outdoor sporting events. Do you think that, look, we're not a political show. We're not going to get into that for obvious reasons. But do you think this catches on And do you think this is something that becomes kind of a national trend? And by the end of the season or going into next season, that's just the case for every major college football conference?
Yeah, I mean, yes, I think so. You're already seeing it in New Orleans, right? I don't think it's statewide, but I know in New Orleans, if you want to go to any type of event, whether that's a Saints game or a Pelicans game or a concert or anything, you have to be able to show either a negative test or a vaccination card. And that's going on in states all over the country. I'm fairly positive California's put that in as well. If not, they will be soon. The state of Washington, I think, has.
Yeah.
That's that. So I was saying, and again, I don't want to get too political, but I was saying at the beginning of this year, I don't obviously not like on the show, but saying to others that with the vaccine rolling out, we're essentially going to say, if you're vaccinated, you are welcome into this establishment. If you're not vaccinated, you are not. And that's the way we're going to, more or less force people to go get vaccinated, because you will be able to access things that you want to access if you don't have a vaccine. And people told me I was crazy, and I'm not. It's like we're seeing it already. And there's legal stuff that I can get into. I'm not, but there's legal stuff I could get into.
Thank you.
That basically explains, like, I think they have a right to do so.
Yeah. It's man. The outdoor events is something that I wasn't prepared for. I mean, I thought, you think of indoor events, that's probably going to be the case. But the question is how many people that got this vaccine are still going to remember where their little card is and be able to pull that out or pull out a picture of it. Or I saw a tweet the other day that somebody put out that said, I'm finally ready to talk about this. I have no idea where my vaccine card is. And so, yeah, for those of you that either were like, I probably don't need this, or lost it or misplaced it, and you want to go to a sporting event over the next couple of years, I would say good luck, because you're probably going to need it. And I don't know what you do to go about getting a replacement card. I would imagine it's probably a pretty difficult thing to obtain. What I
will tell you is, because I had this thought when I got vaccinated, I know I kept my card. It's with my Social Security card. Like, I know where it is, because I knew, or I had a feeling this was going to happen. If I wanted to go places, if I wanted to get on an airplane, if I wanted to go to a movie theater, I had a feeling this was going to happen. And I was like, I just need to know where this is at all times.
Yep. We actually just took a picture of it on our phone and was like, all right.
I don't think that's going to work. I think they're going to want to see the physical card.
Well, that they might. All right, Kyle. So ESPN published an article a couple of days ago, and the title was "Ultimate College Football Road Trip," and basically they kind of went through week by week of what would be like the best games to go to, and obviously some of this might change given if teams exceed or underperform. But I'll read a couple of them. I mean, we talked a lot about a lot of these games, honestly. We talked UNC Tech. We talked Oregon, Ohio State. Week 3, Bama at Florida. Ooh, that's a big early game. Auburn at LSU later this season. The Red River rivalry. USC Notre Dame. The cocktail party. LSU at Bama. Iowa State, Oklahoma, and then OSU, Michigan. But if you had to think about, I won't say ultimate college football road trip, like putting games together, but if you're like, if there's one venue or one game, whether it's, technically scheduled this year or that you would just want to see, if you're thinking the ultimate Kyle Castles college football road trip, where are you going and who you see him play?
So I've been to a few places. I've been to Death Valley at a big game down in Baton Rouge, and I don't know that I've ever experienced a.
Got to tip your hat.
Absolutely.
Got to tip your hat to the Bayou Bengals, no doubt.
Yeah, I was literally, and I was a junior in high school, so I feel like I should have known this, but I was not expecting to see Mike the Tiger in a cage like right there as I was walking in.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like if that one is there, I actually went to a Texas A&M game in Austin, So I've been to DK Royal State. Wait, no, that's A&M. Right? Or is that anyway? I've been to the stadium in Austin.
Yeah.
I've driven by the Rose Bowl, living out there for a little bit. If there's just, I've never been to Bryant-Denny, and I feel like that's a cop out because but still, I've never been to Bryant-Denny. I've never been to the Swamp. I've never been between the hedges in Athens. And I get it. I'm from Mississippi, so I'm an SEC guy, and I'm a little biased, but like those are up there. At the Horseshoe, I'd like to go to in Columbus. I'd like to go to the Big House, in Ann Arbor. I'd love to go to Notre Dame Stadium and see Touchdown Jesus and all that. Is there anybody else that I'm going like this is where I want to go? I'd love to go to Blacksburg and see that entrance on a Saturday night. I'd love to go experience the 12th man there in at Kyle Stadium Kyle Stadium for Texas A&M, DK Royal, Texas. There we go. I was right.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's kind of those atmospheres that I would love to see. I mean, I've been to Mississippi State, been to Oxford, been to Baton Rouge, been to Knoxville. I think that's all the SEC schools I've been to. So, I mean, I've seen a few.
Yeah. Yeah, I was trying to think through this and just thinking like, okay, if I could go see, two essentially like if you knew that two teams could potentially play, so I wouldn't put like Ohio State versus Alabama in Tuscaloosa because that more than likely just wouldn't happen. But and thinking through, I mean, I've been to a lot of those. I've been to Bryant-Denny, been to Tiger Stadium, been to A&M, been to Neyland, to name a few. But you said one, and I think when I was thinking through this, like. Back in the day, like the Michigan Notre Dame game was huge. I mean, like huge. Like the winner was going probably to either the Rose Bowl or like with Notre Dame, the Orange Bowl, and was going to compete for the national championship. So if I could go to South Bend to see Michigan and Notre Dame, Michigan wearing the green uniforms, night game, that's my number one. Don't care anything about either of the programs, but I just think that would be just the coolest atmosphere. And it's definitely on the bucket list for sure. So
I don't think you're wrong there. For me, it's not so much the games. Like I want to be part of the atmosphere. So I just need it to be a big game. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I need an undefeated or a one-loss Michigan team coming into an undefeated or one-loss Ohio State in the Horseshoe, or you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I need a highly ranked Penn State going to Ann Arbor. Happy Valley. I didn't mention Happy Valley.
That's a good call.
I missed that one.
Yeah, that's a real good call.
Yeah,
that place that was a part of our bracket, and when that place gets rocking, it's like it has very few peers among the college.
You know what? We didn't put like I get it. I understand them not being on the venue, but Blacksburg, Virginia, Lane Stadium, like that one was close to being on the list. I would think.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I think you just think of Enter Sandman. That makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just thinking about it. All right, let's shift gears. We talked a lot of college football, and for good reason. And we're going to continue throughout the college football season. And I'll get into that in just a few minutes. But Kyle, I mentioned it before the break. You coached both of your sons in some regard in baseball this past year, and we talked about that a couple of times on the show. I am coaching Emma's soccer team coming up. We have our first practice tomorrow night, so I might need to get some practice notes from you. Just like, man, what do you do with 4 or 5 year olds for an hour?
It's like herding cats. Just make sure they all have fun and maybe they learn something.
Yeah. But I'm excited, man. I'm excited this is the first time for her to play soccer. And I played soccer growing up, as you know, and loved it. And I think she's going to really enjoy it. And she's really fast. So I think she could potentially be fairly decent. But I'm so curious as to how this like dad / coach thing, this dynamic works. I was telling some friends of ours this afternoon, we went to the pool with, and they said, "Oh, did you volunteer to coach, or did you just kind of get put in?" And I said, well, first off, I think my thought was this is probably the only way she's going to play is I'm saying, hey, dad's going to be your coach. So I'll be there with you at all the practices and stuff. But like, tell me, what am I walking into here? What should I be? What should I do? What should I not do? How do you interact with the parents? What is that like? Give me your dad / coach kind of 101 here.
So a few things that came to mind as we were talking. First off, you're doing this now. If you decide you don't want to do it next season, make sure you sit down and have a talk with Emma, because I was like officially Jack's coach. I got a shirt and a hat and all that. And so going out for Jack's first practice last week, he started going, "Hey, Dad, you're my coach." I'm like, "No, buddy, I'm not your coach this year. They didn't need me to help." And it took him a little bit. Like, I think I said it 2 or 3 times before it kind of clicked. Like, Daddy's not coaching. You're going to practice. I'm going to sit out. Like at Wrigley's practices, I'm going to sit out in my chair and just watch you. And he did fine. He did great. He made this little friend, and biggest issue is like getting that kid to shut up. You know, not the other kid, Jack, getting Jack to shut up and actually pay attention to what he's doing. So that start there. I'm hoping Bo Myers is still watching us. But it's interesting that he actually commented this show, because when I was coaching Bo, I was not the only offensive line coach. The other offensive line coach name was Kelly Myers, which is Bo's father. And so he and I talked a lot about, how best to, and hopefully, Kelly, if you're listening, hopefully I'm not saying too much, but we talked a lot about how to handle Bo, because Kelly could kind of push him more than anybody else because it's his dad.
Sure.
But Kelly also didn't want to push as much because he's also dad.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so it's really, and at 4 years old, you don't have to worry about this.
Well, of course, yeah.
But when you're talking, Bo's a junior, senior in high school, and he's getting these colleges looking at him and all that kind of stuff, now all of a sudden we have to figure out, like, where does this fit in? Where does, like, the dad stop and the coach start? And really by Bo's senior year, like, Bo was kind of my player, and I did most of the coaching, and Kelly kind of hung back and coached, because it was really difficult for Kelly. And he would tell me almost daily, like, never coach your own kid. It is very difficult it was difficult for me coaching Jack at 4 years old. I couldn't, go 14 years later and now he's 18. There's no way I could coach my own kid. So, like, my hats off to Kelly Myers. That was difficult. So as far as coaching your own kid, that you got to treat them just like everybody else, and that's the hard part.
Yeah.
Because most of us, our expectation for our kids is going to be greater than what we have for others.
Of course.
And so that's difficult. And the expectation needs to be the same all the way across. And that's what Kelly was really talking about. The other, as far as dealing with parents, so Wrigley has a new coach this year in his baseball, or this fall for his baseball team. And that coach literally let his sons are the assistant coaches, and they play baseball at Franklin High School. So there you go.
There you go.
And so they were out there, like, coaching the boys while he met with parents during practice. And he's like, if you want to talk playing time, sleep on it for 24 hours. If you still want to talk about it, call me. But most of the time, you don't want to after you wait 24 hours. I think you're talking like 6-7-year-olds play baseball.
Yeah.
They're all going to play. They may be in different positions. You may think my kid's a shortstop. Well, your kid may not be a shortstop. And so it's really hard, especially where we live, with all of the affluency and all of the entitlement that people have. I ran into this when I was coaching high school ball. There's a lot of entitlement. I had a player cuss me out, and I was told, you are going to set the discipline. And basically it came down to, like, how long did I want him to sit Friday night? And I decided to go with 1/2. Dad threw a fit. I mean, threw an absolute fit about it. Kid got in the second half, and the second play of the second half threw a punch, and he was knocked out of that game plus the next one. I was like, I tried.
Yeah.
So it's a thing. Like you got to be okay with just telling people, like, I'm the coach, and this is what I've decided to do. If you don't like it, then I don't need you. Like, don't say it that way.
Right.
That's kind of the attitude you got to have.
Yeah. I don't know that I need to get, I don't know that I'll go into 4 and 5 year old soccer with that entitled attitude, that complete attitude. And I don't know. I like part of so we have practice on Monday night, and my plan is we're going to do 30 to 45 minutes of, practice and drills and things like that. And then the last 15, we're going to sit down with the parents and talk through the season and, the all important snack schedule and who's bringing the snacks after the game. And if that's even a thing during COVID, I'm guessing it still is, but then just talk about, like, okay, expectations and, this is the Y Soccer League. Everybody plays a half. That may differ in terms of when they're in and when they're out, because we can sub at any point in time, but they're going to play. I promise you, they're going to play the same amount. So hopefully I can squash a lot of that at the beginning and just say, like, look, hey, we're all going into this for fun. This is 4 and 5 year old soccer. We're just here to learn and all that. But I'm excited. I'm cautiously optimistic, I think, is the term that I'm looking for in this, because I know that at any given moment it could become a train wreck where she just, like, refuses to do anything, and I'm having to continue to coach the team while my daughter's, like, laying on the field crying. But it's fun. I'm looking forward.
That's why you have Mama.
That's right.
And Mama needs to be there to take care of things while you. So Jack had a meltdown at a game last spring because we had a rain out, and the rain out was rescheduled for 2:30 on a Sunday afternoon, which is right in the middle of nap time.
Yes.
And look, he's 4. He still needs naps. If he doesn't get his nap, he is the grumpiest little kid, and he has a complete meltdown. And I eventually just said, go to Mama. Because I still had, 8 kids out there that I was supposed to be, like, watching and helping and whatever.
Yeah.
And, like, it's hard because you want to keep looking over and going, like, is he done? Can he come back? But I also have to watch what's going on in front of me. So I'll be honest, I'm not a huge fan of coaching my own kid. Like I said, I did it with Jack officially. With Wrigley, I helped out whenever I was needed. Last year, I don't like it. I want to sit down. I want to watch my kid play. I don't really want to coach my kid.
Yeah. This is for me. I've having worked with the Y for a long time. I've coached a lot of youth soccer teams, and so I think I have a little bit of an advantage there in the fact that I've done it not from a, like, strategy or expertise standpoint in soccer at all, but more of just like I've coached 4 and 5 year olds before. I know how this goes. I know it's hurting cats. I know that, that the parents aren't really all that interested, but there's going to be that one or two that does that. So trying to go in with that mindset. And then again, my whole thing was like, let me just coach her at least this year, because that'll at least get her playing. Mm-hmm. And that'll get her involved for a season. Then we can kind of go from there. So I will report back next week, Kyle, on practice 1, and we'll see how it goes. Then we get our first game on September 11th, which I'm very, very pumped about. So we're going to go to a very quick break. When we come back, we're basically all we're going to do is just kind of preview next week's show, but we'll be back with Dad's Watching Sports. Coming up next week on Dad's Watching Sports, we continue our trek through the college football season as we look at week 1 and what's coming up and some of the biggest games. And also we debut the best tailgate food bracket. That and more next week on Dad's Watching Sports. We will see you then. Welcome back. We're wrapping things up here on Dad's Watching Sports. Kyle Castles, Michael Draper. We appreciate you checking us out each and every week. Kyle, I just alluded to it in our little commercial there. We got a big week next week. We'll have a couple of college football games behind us, and we'll be really kind of diving into week 1, and we'll have a guest or two to help us do that. And then, Kyle, one thing I'm excited about, we've talked about it the last couple of weeks, asking all of our guests about their favorite number one overall seed tailgate food. We're going to launch that bracket. And what we're going to do, I've coordinated with our good buddies over there at the Bracketeers. And so what we're going to do is they're going to help us organize basically a draft to seed the bracket. We're going to have a couple of individuals, and you and I will kind of combine as one pick as well. So we'll have the seeds, and then they're going to help us out kind of throughout to get the people that follow them to vote in, and we're going to do some of it on the show. So they're going to join us as well to help us go through this, and we'll get it knocked out in a couple of weeks. But the best tailgate food bracket, I'm excited. Are you?
Absolutely. In the last week or so, I've probably had chicken wing. I think I've had 3 chicken wings 3 times.
Nice.
Just getting ready for this tailgate bracket because chicken wings are going to win.
Well, that's yet to be seen. We've seen some chalk brackets. We've seen some upsets. Although our last food bracket, the cereal bracket, was pretty chalk, so we'll see if this one is as well. But I'm excited about it, and we'll get all that information out to all of our followers on Twitter throughout the week. So, all right, Kyle, college football is upon us. Let's get excited. We will see you all next week. This has been Dad's Watching Sports. Y'all take care.